Well, the truth is, nothing's ever really perfect, so it was bound to catch up with them eventually. And as we enter the end of the preseason, that's exactly what happened. Let's talk about what's going on with the Kansas City Chiefs as the final preseason game draws near, and they have a couple of injuries to talk about. Welcome back to RGR. I'm Ryan. This is me going rogue on the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, and pretty much everything in between. So welcome back if you're a regular. If you're new, hit the subscribe, the notification, as well as leave a thumbs up if you like this video. And put your comment down below. Let me know what you think about this topic, and it's a tough topic. As they get ready to go into the end of the preseason, and you really want to be finely tuned, the Chiefs' luck just ran out. That's really all it comes down to, because this preseason, they've been in pretty good shape. The offseason gave them a whole lot of trouble in the form of media and everything else with the Tyreek Hill situation. And it all kind of just fell away as they hit training camp, and it went pretty smoothly. Not a lot of injuries, despite, a couple of hiccups. Pat Mahomes sliding everywhere. I know that gave people some pause, but nothing ever came of it. He's not going to play in Game 4. We'll talk about that later and on Friday. But the injury bug did catch up with them. And what they did, a couple of moves that they had to perform, one that was lingering that didn't really surprise me. But now the biggest one is probably the quarterback, because quarterbacks are quarterbacks. Chad Henne is broken. A fractured ankle is what came down this week. To start off the practice week is what's really trying to drive towards the end of the preseason, get those rosters finalized, let guys make their stand, and really get down to the nitty-gritty of facing the Jacksonville Jaguars that's coming up. On a third down play, got hit, rolled a little bit with one guy on his ankle, another guy on his upper body, and fractured his ankle. No news yet on the IR plan for him. I assume that what they're going to try to do is explore the injuries, both to him and Breeland Speaks. We'll talk about him in a second. And try to see what they have. Try to see what kind of timeline they can come up with. And if it's really as bad as it seems, which probably it is. Let's be honest. Quarterback's mobility and ability to throw off of that back foot, and I believe it's his right foot, that's important. And a guy of that age, maybe it's not something that can come back. If he can, I'm sure they will want him to, because they put a lot of investment into Chad Henne. And I think that they like what they have in him in terms of the veteran that he is, that can be able to run Reed's offense if called upon. And I think that's really what they're looking for. In the wake of this injury, and until we know more, what they did is go out and sign Matt Moore, a guy that they had talked to initially when they were looking for a replacement backup, a veteran guy that can be in the room after Chase Daniels left. And what ended up happening was the signing of Henne, but Moore was in that conversation as well. A guy that's been around the league a bit, always been a so-so starter, probably a career backup, a guy that can manage a game pretty well. I know y'all don't like that term, but it's true. And somebody that had been on their list as a possibility at the time. Then they signed Henne. In the meantime, Matt Moore's gone on to retire from the NFL, coaching high school football, as we understand.
Coach said that you were getting ready to coach high school football. Were you surprised to get the call from the Chiefs?
I was, to be honest. I was out running around with the kids, and it was good. But, Coach Reed gave me the call, and excited to be here. So, but yeah, it was a little special.
Understood. They were okay with
that? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So that was fine.
And so they had to pull him back out of retirement, which I'm sure for a guy his age, at a chance at being a backup on a Super Bowl possibility team, I'm not surprised that he jumped at that rather quickly. And what he gives them is, again, a guy with veteran experience who's played in multiple offenses, although not Andy Reid's, and that is something to be concerned about. And somebody that, should anything happen to Pat Mahomes, he tweaks his little finger or whatever and has to miss a game or two, that you feel like you can get through using Matt Moore as a guy that has seen defenses and can read what's going on and can at least put the ball where you're designed to put it. You're not going to get those ad-lib plays from him. You're not going to get any of the extraordinary playmaking ability, but you will get solid, offensively sound play from a guy that was on the street coaching high schoolers last week. And that's a nice development for a team that really can't let anything derail them at this point. Now, the corresponding move was a little bit unfortunate in my personal opinion, and definitely for Jon Lovett, because to make room for more, they put Lovett on IR. Because he's not going to make the opening day roster, he is done for the season. He is not eligible to be designated to return, so he will not play in 2019. And I find that unfortunately because you've heard me talk about him in the past as a guy that provides a lot of wrinkle. A guy that can throw the ball, obviously, as a college quarterback, that you could run some Wildcat with. You could run some of the niftier things that Doug Peterson did in order to win a Super Bowl. Some concepts there that I think are really intriguing, as well as the fact he's a pretty good athlete. He moves well, especially in underneath crossing routes from the H-back slot or even lined up as a secondary tight end off the line of scrimmage, so he doesn't have to deal with the bigger defensive lineman. I think he's a guy that provides, again, a lot of options. A lot of trickiness that Andy Reid could pull in for another playmaker, a guy that keeps the defenses on their toes and allows the playmakers they already have to flourish by a sheer lack of being able to cover everyone. So, and the other critical injury is Breeland Speaks, who has a strained MCL and a partially injured, we don't know if it's just partially torn or if it's actually a ruptured meniscus that has to be surgically repaired. It is going to be a surgery. It looks like the timeline they're saying an estimate at 3 months, which puts him still in the realm of possibility to play in 2019, which is an interesting concept in and of itself. If he's able to come back, he offers them something they don't currently have right now. A guy that can rush from the outside and come in at tackle, and can probably be about 50-50 productive in either position. I think they like what they found in him, and they're trying to make the most of that draft pick. Moving outside linebacker was tough for him under Bob Sutton in 2018. And you saw him make a couple of plays from time to time, but generally look a little bit lost and out of kilter. I think it's a great possibility that you might get him back for the playoff run and a chance for him to kind of redeem himself in that play against Tom Brady, who I am, especially with the retirement of Andrew Luck, which is a whole different video. Maybe I'll throw this up there. Maybe I'll just do a podcast about it. But that changes the dynamic of the AFC playoffs, and it makes it all the more likely that this team will face Tom Brady again come playoffs. And it's a nice time for having a fresh set of legs with a chip on their shoulder against that specific team, and having had a few weeks to play himself back into shape. He came into camp heavy, and not in a good way. I thought that the weight didn't look very good on him. Would have liked to see more muscular development, which wasn't there. So he was shedding, and that's when you start to see him pick up. Had a sack the week before. I think he's generally starting to look better and obviously more comfortable in that 4-3 alignment, down alignment, that I think he can actually play. And that brings up two scenarios about how they might go about replacing him on this roster, because until this point, he was a shoo-in as one of the top 4 defensive ends, whatever you wanted to call them. That's probably where they would have left him aligned. So there's two options. My mind immediately went to Emmanuel Ogbah, who's been slow coming out of the gate. Had a back injury, so maybe that slowed him down, but just didn't look like he was physically developing the aggression and into the scheme like you would like. But he's also a guy who played end and inside in Cleveland and has shown a skill set there at the professional level that you can really kind of buy into. And that versatility, end to defensive tackle, is one way they could go. The other way, and a guy that has been gnawing on me in the back of my head for a couple of weeks, is Jeremiah Attaochu. Again, versatility, the name of the game, but he can play at either defensive end or take a step back and play at a linebacker position. Looked at him at Sam, see him moving around the defense a little bit. Wearing 51, I think, is kind of prophetic because he seems to be in that kind of position where Frank Zombo was for a number of years. Being able to play inside and outside, fill in where needed, and not a premier talent, but certainly a guy with enough experience to bring something to the table to solidify this defense in case of injury, which then goes to protecting what you can do at other spots on the roster. Having Attaochu and Ogbah there as options, I think one of them will make the roster, especially in lieu of Speaks. I'm not sure if both can get squeezed onto it yet. And what may end up deciding that particular position group is going to be Game 4, which is going to decide a lot of positions. One in particular, Moore's not going to play, so clearly they're saving him for the backup spot. He's going to make the roster. It seems now that Shermer and Litton are going to kind of battle it out to see who they want to bring back to the practice squad. They might try to sign them both and just be happy with who they end up with. that's certainly something that could happen. But those two are going to share the duties at quarterback, and you're going to see Ocho and Ogbah and a number of guys rotate on the defense in those particular positions. Now I'll have my top 5 for this game come out Friday, and on it will be a couple of little bit twists, but right here, a couple of other positions to keep an eye on are going to be the wide receiver groups, what happens with Dat, Cody Thompson, Byron Pringle, a number of guys that can make some hay right here and get themselves onto this roster in this game against the Packers. As well as the cornerback group. Can Herb Miller actually step up and get a shot starting this particular game with a lot of the starters out and play well? What can Mark Fields do? What was Rashad Fenton going to be able to pull off? Those corners are really going to be in a scrap because we know what the top 4 are in Fuller, Breeland, Ward, and Claiborne, but what goes on beyond that? Is there a chance to keep 6? That's the way I've been leaning all offseason, but now some of the special teams things are coming in that might force you into keeping 5 safeties. And there are really only 5 safeties in this group. Obviously, beyond Thornhill and Matthew, your starters are going to be Sorensen number 3, clearly. And then Watts and Lucas are going to make this roster if they go 5. And the last guy that we need to watch this week and coming up is how they're going to do the special teams. There's Smith and there's Dat, and those are the 2 guys that outside of Hardman and Hill that you can see returning some kicks and maybe even covering some kicks. So let's see what happens with those guys. Injury, again, is what's driving all of this, and it's opening up a couple new opportunities for guys. We're going to see what happens come this game against the Packers, and I'm looking forward to it. I'll be back on Friday with my top 5 things to watch for this last preseason game and looking at who's going to make this roster. It's going to be a fun time. I hope you guys can check it out. Check out these videos here, and I'll talk to you next time.